Let's do a demonstration here of EIGRP and implement and troubleshoot EIGRP in an IPv4 network. This is the network we're going to be using in the demonstration. I have 4 routers, A, B, C, and then our layer 3 switch here. And I've set this up so that there's a serial link involved here so that we have a bandwidth difference by default between the fast Ethernet links and our serial connection. Our serial connection is going to have a default bandwidth of 1.544 megabits per second versus our fast Ethernet, which should be at 100 megabits per second. What we're going to do is just go ahead on each device and implement EIGRP, and I'll show you all of the little nuances that we need to be aware of as we're configuring this protocol. Let's move over to my PC. My PC here is the maroon PC connected to the layer 3 switch in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to open up PuTTY and connect my rollover cable to router A. Let's log in. And right now, if I do a show IP interface brief, we should see that I have 3 IP addresses configured here, one on fast Ethernet 00, one on serial 010, and then my loopback IP address that I've configured that will be used as my router ID. Now in EIGRP, it will configure a router ID, and it's going to use the same process that OSPF used. The router ID is calculated by either 1, the configured router ID value, 2, the highest IP address on any loopback interface, and 3, the highest IP address on any active interface. Let's go ahead and configure EIGRP now. To do this, we're going to say router EIGRP, all right? And we've done this several times now. To turn on a routing protocol, it's effectively the same process. We're going to enable the routing protocol and then tell it what networks to advertise. Here, though, the last value I need to give to my EIGRP configuration is something called the autonomous system number. Now, in EIGRP, unlike OSPF, the autonomous system number I assign here is going to have to be identical on every single EIGRP router in my network. Now, EIGRP sends this autonomous system number in its hello messages so that our autonomous system number must match in order to build a neighbor relationship. This is unlike OSPF, where OSPF does not send the process ID number that we configure in the same spot in OSPF, does not send that number in OSPF, only EIGRP. So I'm going to choose 10 for my EIGRP process. What I do next is I advertise my directly connected networks. In this case, I have 3 of them. I have network 10.0.0.12 with a 30-bit mask. Here, since EIGRP does not use areas, all we have to do is advertise the network and the wildcard mask. Then we can do network 10.0.0.4 with the same 30-bit mask. The last one I want to advertise here is my loopback interface, 192.168.2.0 with a 24-bit mask. And then there's one other command that I have as an old fart network engineer that I have continuously remembered to put into my EIGRP configuration, and that is the command no auto summary. All right. On more modern versions of Cisco IOS, no auto summary is on by default or turned off by default, however you want to look at that. What auto summarization is it is a feature that sounds really, really fancy and nifty, like it's going to do a sophisticated route summarization calculation. But the reality is that that is not what auto summarization is. Auto summarization in the case of EIGRP means that it's going to automatically summarize on classful network boundaries. This is an old school philosophy about route summarization, which in this case means that EIGRP will only summarize with a mask of /8 on class A addresses, /16 on class B addresses, and /24 on class C addresses. So it does a very minimal and poor calculation here. It needs to be turned off. On older versions of iOS, EIGRP automatically had auto summary turned on, which caused massive network issues. So now in more modern versions of EIGRP, auto summary is already turned off. Let's move on to our next router here so that we can continue on with our EIGRP configuration. I'm going to move over to router B. So we'll log in here, and I can do a show IP interface brief to see that I have IP addresses 10.0.0.6, 10.0.0.10, and 10.0.3.1 configured here, as well as 10.0.2.1. Looks like none of those IP addresses are configured. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's verify first with a show run that there isn't some error preventing those interfaces from having an IP address show up here. And it looks simply like I did not yet configure the IPs. That's no problem. We can do that relatively quickly. INT S010. I might be able to do that relatively quickly. I just have to be able to spell my interfaces correctly. So IP address 10.0.0.6 with our 30-bit mask. No shutdown, and then we'll go to INT F00. Here we have IP address 10.0.0.10 with our 30-bit mask. And then on interface fast Ethernet 0/1, here we have IP address 10.0.2.1 with a 24-bit mask this time. No shutdown. Let's do INT F00. I did not issue no shutdown there. All right, let's see if that looks better. Show IP interface brief. Now I do have my addresses configured in a way that I like. Let's go now and configure EIGRP. So here we're going to say router EIGRP again, and we'll give it the autonomous system number of 10. Remember, if I don't give it an autonomous system number of 10, I'm not going to build the neighbor relationship. I am going to do this on one of the routers here very shortly to put a different autonomous system number besides 10 so we can see what the result of that is and how we troubleshoot that situation. Here I'm going to advertise network 10.0.0.8 with a 30-bit mask. I'm going to advertise network 10.0.0.4 with a 30-bit mask. I'm going to advertise network 10.0.2.0 with a 24-bit mask. And then network 10.0.3.0 with a 24-bit mask. We can see here that on serial 010, I already have my neighbor adjacency built. It says dual neighbor change. Dual is referring that it's an EIGRP issue. Here it is actually saying IP EIGRP and the autonomous system number of 10. It's telling me the IP address that I built a neighbor relationship with. So we have configured something correctly in EIGRP so far. Let's move on now to our next router, router C, and configure that guy. So we'll log in here. We'll do a show IP interface brief. See if my IP addresses are configured as I wish, and they are. We're going to go into config T now. And here we're going to go router EIGRP. And I'm going to say 100 this time. And let's say that I either made a typo or I don't know what I'm doing. So I'll give router EIGRP an autonomous system number of 100 this time. And then I advertise my networks. Network 10.0.0.0 with a 30-bit mask. Oops, didn't type network 10.0.0.0 correctly there. We're going to have network 10.0.0.8 with a 30-bit mask. And then we're going to have network 172.16.45.0 with a 24-bit mask. We're going to do no auto summary, which I forgot to do on router B. We're going to go do that before we get back to the layer 3 switch config. Now, there's something you should notice. I did not build an EIGRP neighbor relationship with router B like I might expect. If I do a show IP EIGRP neighbor, it's going to show that there are no neighbors for that process currently. So, and the reason for that is that because I set the wrong autonomous system number. Let's go back to router B now and quickly update my EIGRP to put no auto summary in there. No auto summary. If I look at my config now, we should see that no auto summary has been added to my EIGRP config. And there it is right here. Let's move on to the layer 3 switch now and configure that guy. So we'll do a show IP interface brief. On a switch, this shows up a little bit differently here. Our loopback interfaces are at the very end, but I do have the right IP addresses on Fast Ethernet 0/1, 2, and 3. And then my loopback interface at the end, 192.168.99.1. So let's go in now and configure EIGRP, router EIGRP. We have to put a 10 after that. And we're going to say network 10.0.0.0 with a 30-bit mask. Network 10.0.0.12 with a 30-bit mask. And then network 10.0.1.0 with a 24-bit mask. We already had a neighbor state change here, right? We're neighboring up this time with router A at IP address 10.0.0.14. We have one more network to advertise, and that is the 192.168.99.0 network with the 24-bit mask. That's the network that's on our loopback interface. If I do a show run here, we can check out what the EIGRP configuration looks like. It's going to show up at the very end here after our port configurations. And here's our EIGRP configuration. No auto summary is not showing up there. That makes me, as an old fart network engineer, concerned. So I'm always going to issue that no auto summary just to be sure. So now if I look at my show IP EIGRP neighbors, I should have a neighbor with router A at IP address 10.0.0.14, and that's it. Right now I do not have a neighbor relationship with router C because remember, a router C is on the wrong EIGRP autonomous system. However, if I do a show IP route, what I should see here is I should have routes to all of the networks in my environment except for the 172.16.45.0 network. So we'll do my show IP route here, and sure enough, I have all the networks that are shown in the drawing except for the 172.16.45.1 network. The reason that's not showing up is because router C does not have a neighbor relationship with any of the other routers. Well, let's go fix that configuration on router C so that we can have a complete routing table. One of the things we should notice before we do that is our EIGRP routes here are showing up with a letter D in the front. And if we look at letter D here as the code, letter D means EIGRP. The reason for that is EIGRP uses the dual algorithm to calculate the routing table based on the topology table. I can take a look at that topology table as well, doing the show IP EIGRP topology. Whoops, not traffic, but topology. And that will show me all of the routes that I've learned about. Notice that all of my routes right now are in a P state. The P state stands for passive, meaning that these routes are currently stable in my routing table and in my topology table. Let's go over to router C and fix that guy up. So I've moved my rollover cable over to router C. Let's go into config T here. I'm going to do a show run, and I can use the pipe here to say begin my configuration with the router EIGRP 100 command. And what I want to do is show that. I'm going to select that configuration. I'm going to paste it into Notepad. I'm going to change that to be 10 instead of 100. I'm then going to copy that. What I'm going to do then is paste no router EIGRP 100, and then immediately after that paste the correct configuration. So we'll copy that out of my Notepad document, and then we'll go back to our config mode here and paste that into PuTTY. So there I turned off my router EIGRP 100, turned on router EIGRP 10, and notice almost right away I build a neighbor relationship then with two neighbors using my autonomous system number of 10. If I look at my neighbor table now, show IP EIGRP neighbor, now it will show me that I have two neighbors here, neighbor with 10.0.0.2 and neighbor with 10.0.0.10. If I want to see the router ID configured here, I can do a show IP EIGRP topology table, and that shows me my router ID here, which is right here. Since router C has a loopback interface configured, it's going to use a router ID that's assigned to my loopback interface because I did not explicitly configure a router ID in EIGRP.